All right, welcome back. So we are on video 2 of the SMB Rep Readiness for Tech Sales. Now, for anyone that is tuning into this video, I would recommend that you go look at the previous one as well. I've got all of the videos in this SMB Rep Readiness series in a playlist. I recommend that you view it chronologically. The slides are going to be accessible as well, and the slides will also have a master table with all the links to all the different videos, because this is a chronological series. Who is this video for? If you're a SDR that is stepping into your first quota carrying role, right? So you've gone from being a lovable SDR to now a fully fledged SMB account executive. This video is for you. Or you're already in a SMB sales role. Maybe you're struggling. Maybe no one's given you any real training. Like, this is really common, right? There's a complete lack of sales enablement in most organizations, and God forbid you're in a smaller tech company, like, you're basically screwed. So this video series is your A to Z. It is your entire readiness program. I have put this together because, just for context, I've spent over the last 10 years in tech sales. I have been in tech sales pretty much straight out of university, and prior to finishing university as well, I was in B2B sales, but in a different industry. So pretty much, like, my cumulative B2B sales experience is probably close to about 12 years now. And I've gone through, in that full journey, I've gone through everything from inside sales to SMB account executive to mid-market account executive to enterprise account executive, doing everything from tiny deals to multi-million-dollar, multi-year deals. And I've seen that full journey. So what I've done is, over the course of this series, I've mapped out specifically what it means to be an SMB tech seller. There is a separate series for mid-market. So if you're moving from SMB to mid-market, that's also on my channel. Don't click off, or do it on a separate link. And then there is one from mid-market to enterprise, right? So I've mapped those entire journeys out for you, and this is very practical stuff. I'm not a fluffy guy, so I'm not here to give you fluff and, mindset advice, even though mindset is important. We're here to get into the technical stuff. So if you haven't seen the first video already, watch that, or at least load it up. There is some very important stuff that I cover off there to scene set before we get into the real technical stuff, which is about to, what we're going to get into now. So this video, we are going to talk about prospecting for SMB account executives in tech sales. This is probably one of the most important videos in this series. The reason for that, and I will continually harp on about it, the thing that makes you effective as a salesperson is your ability to prospect. If you cannot generate pipeline, you have nothing to close. If you have nothing to close, it doesn't matter how good you are with sales process, you're useless at generating pipeline, right? So let's fix that, right? If you suck at generating pipeline now, let's fix that. I'm going to start off with, let's skip over this. All right, so I'm going to start off with this very quickly. Again, don't change this or don't move off this just because I'm talking about prospecting mindset. This is really freaking important, because this is not about mindset for the sake of mindset. This is prospecting toolkit, mindset tools, right? So these are tools that you need to have to be able to show up every day and prospect. I will share one story with you, and I think this story is incredibly important. Mark Cuban, love him or hate him. I recently am not a big fan of Mark Cuban, but I've always been a fan of old school Mark Cuban, because when Mark took over the Dallas Mavericks, when he took over the Dallas Mavericks franchise, if you're a basketball person, you'll know, he turned that freaking franchise around. The reason they won a damn championship is because of Mark. I know the players did the playing, but it wouldn't have happened if the leadership didn't flow from the top. One of the things that Mark did when he took over the franchise is he realized he needed to get people excited about watching the Dallas Mavericks again. He needed to get people into the stadium. And so what he did was he took the yellow pages, back for you young bucks that have no idea what the yellow pages was. I'm 32. So back in my day, God, it feels weird saying that, but back in my day when I was a kid or when I was a teenager, like we had these phone books. We had these phone books with people's numbers in them. Like it was astounding. These big fat phone books with people's numbers in them, right? Before the World Wide Web and before the internet and all this crazy stuff, like we had these freaking phone books. And so what he did was he literally took this phone book, he plonked it down in a desk in the middle of the office, in the middle of the Dallas Mavericks office. He's the owner of the team. He is a billionaire at this point. He is a billionaire. He took a phone book, he sat down in the middle of the office and he started calling people. He started calling people that have been to any Dallas Mavericks games, and he said, hey, we'd love to get you back for a game, and we've got a bit of a discount on the season passes, but don't worry about that, just come to a game. Can we get you along for a game, because I think you'll love it. He was cold calling people to come and watch his team. That is how a sales focused CEO leads, right? And so I love that story because you're never too damn important to pick up the phone and dial. If your job is a salesperson and he was able to do it as a fucking CEO of the organization, that tells you that you are never too important to pick up the damn phone and dial. Like, this is such an important mindset to have. The reason I shared this story and this story alone with you is because on my hardest days, I would literally have a photo of Mark Cuban on my wall, and when I felt lazy and I felt, damn, I'm too tired, I'm an account executive, I've got too much going on, I look at that photo and I said, no, I got a prospect today because I am not more important than the CEO of my company, right? I'm a sales guy, right? And if the owner of a company can pick up the phone and dial, I can pick up the phone and dial because that's what I'm being paid to do, right? The next thing that I'll quickly share with you is every customer has a problem. You are trying to find the CEO of the problem. So as salespeople, sometimes we can start to get in our own head about calling people. We get nervous about it. Oh my God, I don't want to call someone. I'm worried that if I call someone, they're going to think that, I'm annoying them. No, right? Like you're trying to find the person that owns the problem that you can solve. Okay. So everyone out there has problems. I have problems. I have a number of problems in my business and in my life that I want to solve. If someone calls me and says, hey, we help others solve this problem, I'm curious, do you have that problem? Is that top of mind for you? If it is top of mind for me, I'm paying attention. I'm like, look, you called me out of the blue, but yeah, I am interested in that because I'm trying to fix this thing. Your job as someone that is prospecting as an SMB account executive is to find people that have problems that you can solve, meaning you're finding the CEO of the problem. Then you help them solve that. The last part is sales is a contact sport. You cannot be an armchair quarterback. You have to get in the damn game. So get in the damn game every day. My favorite way to approach prospecting is time-boxed blocks of prospecting. And how you want to do that is you want to make sure you've got a tight handle on top of your calendar. So if you have a look over here, I've got anything here in purple, these purple blocks over here, those are my prospecting blocks. It's blocked out in the calendar, right? So I know when I'm showing up to prospect. We'll get to this. This is the operational rhythm part of the prospecting thing, but the prospecting session, we'll get to that, right? So let's go back to mindsets. Those are 3 things that I want you to keep top of mind. And if it helps, get a photo of Mark Cuban and put it on your wall so that Mark's staring at you every day. And every day you find yourself being a bitch, you can look at Mark and go, hey, if the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, a billionaire at the time, can make cold calls, I can make cold calls. Okay, so that's so important to have. Next thing, you're trying to find the CEO of the problem. You're not an annoying cold caller. You are a business professional that solves problems. You're trying to find someone that has a problem that you can solve. And the last part, it's a contact sport. So start contacting some people. Get in the damn game. Get in the field. Do not be an armchair quarterback. Okay, now that we've gotten that out the way, let's dig into some numbers, and then let's start digging into some strategy, and then let's get into the cold call pitch, right? Now, I've talked about this in the first video in the series, but your golden number. This is really straightforward. Your golden number is the only thing that you can control, okay? So if you have a $500,000 quota, if you have a $1 million quota, you probably won't. If you're an SMB account executive, you'll probably have somewhere between a 300 to a 500K quota, likely in US dollars. The 500K is a bit on the high side, but you'll probably be somewhere there. If you work for a really aggressive company, they might have you on a slightly higher number, but you shouldn't have something more than that, right? Now, how do you reverse engineer to understand what your activity levels need to be? And this is a really important exercise that you do. This will keep you sane. This is one of the key numbers that I would track religiously every freaking day and every week. I knew I had a good week when I hit my golden number. I knew I had a bad week when I didn't hit my golden number, right? So what is your golden number? It's the number of net new meetings you book this week. That is your golden number. How do you calculate your golden number? Well, I've made your life easy. So if you click into my tool over here, which I will include this in the links below. My team will have this included in the links below when they upload this, so just access it. Let's take, for example, so this as an example is for someone that is working with a $1 million US quota. So we probably want to edit this a little bit. Let's say, for example, your quota is actually $500,000, right? So ignore that. Let's say it's $500,000. So you can punch these numbers in. So let's actually get rid of that, right? And that edits through, and then let's get rid of the average deal size as well. Okay. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So let's say your annual quota is 500,000. Oh, what did I just do? Did I just delete all my formulas? Okay, I did delete my formulas. Don't delete the formulas. There we go. So let's say your annual quota is 500,000. Your quarterly quota is going to be 125,000 because you got 4 quarters, obviously. And let's say your average deal size, this is a bit on the high side. So let's say, for example, your average deal size, if you're an SMB rep, let's say you're doing $20,000 deals, right? US. And this is ACV, annual contract value, right? So for most tech companies, most SaaS companies, they don't look at your TCV, your total contract value, which is a bit of a bitch, but it is what it is. So what that means is per quarter, you require 6 deals, right? So that is your quarterly. This is all quarterly numbers here, by the way, because if you look at annual numbers, it might make your brain explode. So per quarter, you need 6 deals. Now, what I've done here is I basically reverse engineered your sales process and ripped apart numbers at each stage and looked at some ratios. So long story short, I won't go into all the mechanics. Long story short, what it takes you through is how many proof of concepts to close deals, how many proof of concepts you then require to be able to close these deals, how many demos will go to proof of concepts, how many demos you need to book, how many discoveries to demos, and then your booked versus your executed discoveries. So you factor in some no-shows, and then that looks at your golden number. So what this looks like for you is your golden number is 11, right? So you need to be booking 11 discoveries every week. That is your golden number. So every week you show up and you go, how do I book 11 new discoveries? Now, this is a bit of an aggressive number for anyone in tech sales. You're probably looking at this and going, holy shit, how do I book 11 discoveries? Like, that is a lot of activity. Realistically, your average deal size shouldn't be this small. Like, I mean, let's say, for example, your average deal size is maybe, let's say it's 40,000, right? So it's just, that's a little bit more palatable. Okay, so you know what, let's make it 30,000 so we're not being too optimistic. There we go, right? So again, play around with your numbers, right? Underestimate, don't overestimate on the factors that matter. So for example, your average deal size, I mean, if your average company deal size is 50,000 as an SMB sales rep, then maybe tune that down to 30,000 just because you want to have a little coverage, you want to have a little buffer. But effectively what this tells you is you need to be booking 7 discoveries a week, right? For you to be successful. So if we look at a course of a year, and there's going to be a bit of a volume build-up period, right? So like it's like you book some discoveries this week, you execute them next week, then that starts the sales cycle. You book discoveries next week, that compounds. So all of this compounds over time. But if you're walking in cold as a account executive and you're just trying to make sense of your numbers and you're trying to go, hey, what do I track every week? This is what you track every week, right? Like if you miss this like 2-3 weeks in a row, you're going to be fucked like 5-6 weeks from now, right? Because again, like meetings booked is a lead indicator. Revenue is a lag indicator. If you miss the lead indicators, your lag indicators are going to be screwed, right? So if you haven't read, there's a really good book by Peter Drucker. He talked about, it's like management. I think it's called Good to Great. It might be Good to Great or it might be another one. Anyways, long story short, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it, right? Like, and it's really hard to try to figure out how do I close more. Like, yes, you can, right? And that's really when you start getting into deal mechanics, don't worry, which we're going to cover in the series. So you can't really do a whole lot on deal mechanics if you don't have any freaking deals to work with. And that's where this goes back to this golden number. So obsess over your golden number. When I was a rep, my first at least 8 years, and I still continued it even when I was an enterprise rep, but I was a little bit more relaxed about it because I started to focus more on quality because I only had like 15 accounts. So, but definitely when I was an SMB rep, definitely when I was a mid-market rep, I had my golden numbers and I knew what my golden number was. So when I was at CrowdStrike, for example, I had a $600,000 US quota. My quarterly quota was that. My average deal size was closer to 50,000. And towards the end, I was doing much bigger deals. I was doing like, 80,000, 120,000, multi-year contracts. I was getting up there in deal sizes. But my average deal size, right? My average deal size was 50,000, which meant every week I needed to be booking 5 discoveries. If I wasn't booking 5 discoveries, I was screwed, right? I needed to make sure that I had 64 discoveries booked in a quarter. That was my golden number. And obviously how I did that, I had my own prospecting, I had my SDR, I had my channel, I had marketing trying to push and do some stuff for me as well. But to be honest, marketing didn't really do shit for me. Sorry, CrowdStrike marketing, I'm throwing you under the bus here, but you get the idea. Golden number. You need to know what your freaking golden numbers are, okay? So let's go back to this. Control your inputs, right? Like you cannot control a lot of these outputs. You cannot control a lot of this stuff. What you can control is your inputs. What is this doing here? Let's get rid of that. You can't control a lot of this stuff, right? Like this is like the outputs. That is deal execution, right? And you can control it by becoming a really professional operator, and I'll show you how to do that. But like what you really can control, like directly, like is in your control, is your ability to find and book new meetings, net new meetings. That is the lifeblood of sales, dude. Okay. So where to from here, right? So let's say that you know what your golden number is. Let's say, for example, your golden number is 6 or 7, right? The next thing is we want to start looking at what your territory looks like. Now, I've broken this up into 2 parts, right? So if you have over here what a mid-market and enterprise mapping process looks like, I'm showing that to you because there is a clear difference between mid-market and between the SMB process. Now, some of you might be hybrid SMB reps. And what I mean by that is you'll have a bunch of small accounts. You probably have like 200, 300, 400 small accounts, but you might have a couple of big accounts, right? Management might give you a couple of 2,000 seat, 3,000 seat accounts. So it may be useful to go through this process if you have some big accounts. If you don't worry about it. I highlight how to go through the mid-market and enterprise mapping process for your accounts in the mid-market series as well as the enterprise series. So if you think that's useful, you can have a look at it there. Don't click off this video now. That's for later. But what I really want to focus on with you is the SMB mapping process. Now, you'll thank me for this. It's actually really straightforward. Typically, as an SMB account executive, you're going to have a ton of accounts. You should have, at a bare minimum, 200 plus accounts, right? Like 200 to like 500 accounts. You should have a good, fat, loaded territory. You should have tons of freaking people to go after. And that's important because you need volume. You're going to your deals are smaller and your quota is not that much smaller than a mid-market or a commercial account executive. So you need volume. So you need to make sure you have enough accounts. You're being set up for success. Now, the best way to go through the account mapping process, very straightforward. I don't want you to overcook this. The first thing that you want to check is the account even alive? Is that business even alive? So if you're dealing with tons of 5, 10, 15, 20 employee companies, quickly go on LinkedIn. Is their website still live? Do they still have a LinkedIn presence? Do they have team members based in the country that you're selling in? Or does it have one person in the country you're selling in and then 6 people in India, right? Sorry, I'm not knocking anyone that's Indian. I'm Indian. But you know what I mean, right? If most of it looks like they're remote staff or they're contractors and there's one person, or the company doesn't look like it has much of a presence, it's probably not live. So very quickly sift that, right? Has it been acquired? Is it defunct? Is it still live? Quickly sift that. So go through in your territory mapping spreadsheet. You should have a spreadsheet that you use to basically map your territory. So something like this. This is a very extensive one that I would use for a mid-market account, but you can very quickly go through and repurpose the spreadsheet. Ignore all these headings over here. That's for more mid-market. But really what you need is you just need to know what is their head count, right? And maybe having a second tab over here and just saying as live account or defunct account, right? So really straightforward. Don't need to overcook this. The next thing that you can do is check the head count, right? How many employees do they have? Again, AI can do this for you. So you can get ChatGPT, get the paid version, right? If you paid the $20, it's totally worth it. Take your list of accounts, maybe break it up into blocks of 50 because GPT starts to break down after about 20, 30 results. So take maybe blocks of 25 to 50, pop it into GPT. Hey, are these accounts alive? Do these accounts have a presence? Has there been any recent news? Figure that out. See what the outputs are. Maybe validate it quickly on LinkedIn just so you can double check if it says any of them aren't live. The next thing is just ask GPT, hey, can you give me a quick rundown of headcount? How many employees do they have? Cross-reference website, cross-reference LinkedIn, cross-reference any news, and just go through your territory quickly and figure out, right, what is live. The next one is check possible solution fit. Now, again, this is kind of case by case, right? So I'll give you an example. When I was selling for CrowdStrike, I was in the commercial side, I was in the mid-market side, but I was in the SMB side of Gartner. So I was selling to small, medium businesses when I was in Gartner. But one of the things that I would do when I was at CrowdStrike was I would try to understand, is this the kind of account that can buy? Especially in mid-market, right? If you're selling Okta, if you're selling SailPoint, if you're selling a solution that is technically an enterprise solution and you're trying to sell that to a small, medium business, you got to really ask yourself, is this the right fit, right? So if it is a company that is too small or it's just not the right fit, don't bother, right? So again, this gets a little nuanced. You do need to have a bit of a think on what is the ideal type of business that I can go after. So I'll give you some examples. If you're selling Okta and you're trying to sell to a 10-person tiny logistics company, has outsourced IT, very non-technical. It's a very straightforward business. They just have trucks and they move stuff from A to B. You really got to zoom out and go, look, can they really buy the solution? Who's going to implement it? who's going to manage it? Like it's probably more of a managed services conversation. So what I mean by that is they probably have an outsourced third-party IT company. It's probably more of a conversation where your business has some sort of channel lead. They speak to that managed services provider and they said, hey, can we do a big MSP contract with you? We'll supply you volume pricing and you just flog us into your clients, right? It's probably more of that versus, if you have a SMB solution, let's say like you have CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike has a managed EDR solution. CrowdStrike has a fully managed end-to-end solution for their clients. And maybe there's a 20-person tech company that is a startup. They have some sort of cool banking software, etc. They do need to have good cybersecurity, right? Like that's the kind of company I'm looking at and going, hey, you're small, but you really need to have good cybersecurity. You would find it useful if someone just came in and did it all for you, right? Like if we had a managed solution for you and we just did it all for you, you'd probably find that useful. So even though you're small, you're probably going to be a good fit, right? So this is where once you validated their headcount and you validated that the account is right, you got to really just go through with a bit of a fine-tooth comb. And maybe it's a 2-person company, probably not the right fit. Right, so just qualify that out, right? So again, in your spreadsheet over here, I like using a spreadsheet to do this, a Google Sheet. It's quick and nasty, but it gets the job done, right? Just look at the headcount and maybe have a separate one for ideal customer question mark, right? Just say ideal customer question mark or viable customer question mark. And just very quickly say yay or nay, right? Yep, they're viable. No, they're not viable. What I would recommend though is just because they may not be viable, it's still worthwhile a call. SMB, small medium business account executives, or being a small medium business seller is all about volume. You want to get out into the market and start generating volume, right? Like you don't need to get too strategic. If you're a mid-market commercial seller, that's a little bit more strategic and you do need to operate a bit more strategically. But if you're a if you're an SMB seller, you don't need to sit there getting really strategic. You need to get active. So 3 steps to tiering your accounts and mapping your accounts. 1, is it live? 2, headcount check. 3, check possible solution fit, right? And again, this doesn't have to be perfect. For an SMB rep, it's about volume and reps. So even if the customer or even if the company doesn't look like it's a perfect fit, screw it. Give them a call. Give them a damn call and pitch them, right? Pitch them and qualify the CEO of the problem, qualify if they have the problem. See if there's a possibility to get something going there because you never know. I'll talk to you about the pitch shortly. That's coming up next. But this is foundational work. You want to make sure that you're doing this work beforehand so that you're not wasting your time. Like I've seen reps call into businesses for like weeks on end. They're calling into businesses and then finally someone picks up, like the CEO or like, someone who has their mobile number listed picks up and they're like, dude, like our business is closed. Like we've been closed for like years. Like, have you not checked online? Have you not checked the website? Don't do that. Don't make that mistake, right? Because your time is precious. Even though it is a volume game, you want it to be a focused volume game. Okay. Hope that was useful. We're now going to go into what I like to call weekly PG planning or weekly pipeline generation planning. This is an incredibly important activity. Again, to succeed in prospecting, you have to succeed in prepping for prospecting. If you don't prep for prospecting, and you just show up and you go, I'm going to call a bunch of people, there is no structure, there is no rhyme or reason for why you're reaching out to people. That is a really bad way to operate. And the reason that is a really bad way to operate is you're not building any strategic skill set. So when you end up as a commercial account executive, you're screwed because you can't operate strategically. God forbid you decide to go into an enterprise sales role. You have like no strategic skill set. You're totally screwed. You don't know what you're looking for, why you're looking for that, who to go after. Like you want to develop this ability to identify target prospects and then plan to prospect. When you plan to prospect, your prospecting becomes more effective. All of this is about establishing structure. And what unfortunately happens is most companies do not show you how to operate. They tell you a bunch of stuff about their product, but they don't tell you how to operate. So that is what this next part is about. So when we're talking about operating, this is where we start getting into the activities that are going to make you successful. Now, when we get to the part very soon, by the way, where I talk about operating rhythm, I will cover off holistically what this picture looks like, right? So how much time do you dedicate to prospecting? How much time do you dedicate to preparation and finding prospects to go after, et cetera, et cetera. So I will cover that. Now, when we talk about weekly PG planning, right? So when I say PG, I'm talking pipeline generation. So if you hear me say PG, I'm talking pipeline generation, right? So it's something that we used to use, wording that we used to use when I was in Zscaler. It makes sense, it stuck. So how do you set up for prospecting? This is so important because one of the biggest mistakes that I see reps make is they literally show up to their prospecting blocks and they're like, right, I'm going to call some people. Who are you calling? And then like while they're there, they're trying to find someone and they're trying to call someone and they're trying to find a number. It's incredibly ineffective. We want to focus on maximum effectiveness during prospecting blocks. So how we go about doing that is exactly as I've laid out over here, right? So very straightforward. You will have ideally 2 blocks in your calendar for 45 to 60 minutes. And each of those blocks is when you're planning contacts to target, you're planning messaging, and you input them into the PG planning tool. Now, the PG planning tool is something that I've actually pulled together over here, which is something that you can use. Again, I will include links to these assets so that you can use them. Now, I like to use this spreadsheet because it allowed me to kind of track holistically who I was going after, right? So very straightforward. How the PG planning tool works is I would have a prioritized time frame, right? So I would literally say, I would say week 1, these are the accounts that I'm going to go after. These are the stakeholders. These are their roles. These are their mobiles, their emails. And then I would track whether or not I'd initiated outreach, what has happened. So for example, over here, initiated outreach, no response after 14 days, which means you reassess that contact. If you do 14 days of prospecting sequences, or what I like to call prospecting triples, again, we will get to that. But if you have no response after 14 days, reassess that contact, right? Like don't just spend time going after the same people if you're not getting any cut through, especially if you're using triple sequences, which I will show you how that works. Triples are a very effective way to get cut through. So after 14 days of running triples, you still don't get access to those people. That's probably a good sign for you to look left and right. Who else can you go after? Is there someone else in the account? Rejected, straightforward, right? That basically they picked up and they've gone fuck off. Okay, so if they tell you to fuck off, then you put it as rejected. Qualified out means that you've spoken to them, you've gone through the pitch, which I'll share with you what that pitch looks like. You've validated that they are not the CEO of the problem, and that they don't necessarily have any urgency around a problem. Ideally, you got a booked meeting, and if you don't have any of that, but let's say for example, they say, look, this is really useful. I like your solution, or I like that you can help me solve this problem, but now is not the right time. You can bench that contact, right? Bench them for now, move it to a marketing sequence, and then make sure that they have some sort of marketing sequence. Again, ideally, if you're benching a contact, but you have spoken to them, so that's the metric for benching a contact. If you bench them, it's because you've spoken to them, it's not the right time, they are the right person, then I would make sure that you tag that within some sort of marketing sequence because you want to keep them warm. Ideally though, you set up a reconnect date, right? So you say, hey, if it's okay, can I put a 5-minute placeholder 6 months from now, just so you know to expect my call. I'll keep you posted with some marketing content in the meantime. If we have an event, I'll let you know. So you have a bit of an engagement plan, right? So that's kind of the ideal scenario. I've also got a tab here for ownership, right? So the ownership, this is really important if you're a mid-market account executive or an enterprise account executive. So you can either have your SDR next to it. The AE, that's obviously you, so that's your contact. Your manager, that's a powerful one, right? So a lot of sales reps never leverage their manager for prospecting. I think that's a really good way to go. If your manager potentially has a lot of executive gravitas, maybe they're a bit of an industry big dog, right? They've been in the industry for 10, 15, 20, 30 years and people know them, right? I think that having a select amount of prospecting go through your manager is a really effective way. And then also referral from colleague, right? If there's a colleague that knows that person, then make sure that you track that and you say, hey, this is a referral from the colleague, and then make sure that you take a note or you capture it in your CRM that, hey, like I've got this referral coming in from my colleague. Now, some of you might look at this and just be like, hey, this is double handling, and I totally hear you. You don't have to fill this out extensively. So for example, you don't have to fill out the mobiles and the emails. That's optional, right? Like that's probably going to be in your CRM, so you don't need to do that. What I do like to do is at least have a bit of a view on prioritized timeframes. So as an SMB account executive, what I recommend is that you target 20 to 25 accounts fortnightly. So you're probably looking at that and going, oh, this is different. Like I normally just call a whole bunch of people. I get that, but you want to have a structured approach. You want to have an approach where you have a very sequenced, structured process by which you're reaching out to people, right? So make sure that you have 20 to 25 accounts that you target fortnightly. If you're a mid-market rep, that number comes down, right? If you're a mid-market rep, I wouldn't be targeting anything more than 7 to 10 accounts max fortnightly, right? And if you're an enterprise rep, you're targeting 2 accounts fortnightly, 1 account fortnightly, right? Like you really want to go deep into an account. But because you're an SMB rep, you got to have volume, right? So what I recommend is what you would do is you would list out, your all your accounts that you're going after. Then what you would also do is for each account, 1 to 3 contacts on average. And I say 1 to 3 because if you're going after mid-market to small accounts, not mid-market, if you're going after small accounts, you want to really prioritize your energy on like the key person in that account, right? So if you're dealing with like a company that's 20 people, there's like 1 person in there that can say yes or no, right? So you don't want to waste your time dealing with the other people that can't, because your focus again is volume. You want to go after the most senior people that you can get your hands on, that you can reach out. So I would recommend just having 1 to 3 contacts. So that'll give you, in a 2-week period, 60 to 75 contacts for a focused 2-week prospecting sprint. This is how you start to work through your territory, right? So if you've done this right, you have done your tiering work. You made sure that you know which accounts are live, which accounts are not. You check your head count. If they're too small, they're just not worth your time. Don't waste your time, right? And then you have a quick squiz at possible solution fit. Again, if it's a 1-person company, a 2-person company, and you have a solution that is maybe just not aligned to them, right? Like, pick your poison. I don't know what your solution is. And again, this is maybe where I can work with you more on a mentoring basis to contextualize this information, implement this process into your business. But if you have like a 2-person company and you're selling like, an Okta, or you're selling a Azure backup solution, and you can see like these guys don't even know what the hell Azure is. Like they're just a tiny SMB company. Don't waste your time, right? If it's a 25-person company and you can tell that they have like 2 developers and they are actually building their own like platform because they're some sort of like tech startup, then that's different. If you have like an Azure backup, an Azure DevOps backup solution. I'm using a very specific example because one of my students at the moment does have an Azure DevOps backup solution, right? So that's where you kind of want to make sure that you're looking at possible solution fit. But assuming you've done all of that, you want to make sure that you're getting straight down to this, narrowing accounts, 20 to 25 accounts fortnightly. Track it. Track that in the spreadsheet, because you want to make sure that every prospecting setup block that you're doing, right? So when you're doing this PG planning block, you're taking a look at your PG planning spreadsheet. And you're having a look, okay, who have I booked meetings with? All right, I've XYZ Corp. I managed to get a meeting booked in here. Awesome. I probably don't need to call these 2 other people because this is the main guy. Awesome. Well, then what you would do is just look at the next account, then look at the next account. So every couple of weeks, you want to make sure that you're recycling this and putting fresh blood or fresh meat back into the pipeline, right? So this is how we stay on top of prospecting cadence. Again, this is so important to do because this preparation work is the work that is going to make you effective when it comes to prospecting. Okay, so now that we've done the pipeline generation planning, the PG planning, now what we want to do is start to look at your multi-threaded prospecting. So you would have heard me say some stuff before. I said triples, I'm just saying multi-threaded prospecting. What the hell is all of this? I'll explain it. It's very simple. This is something that I learned from one of my sales mentors, Tony Hughes. Tony is a phenomenal tech sales mentor. He was someone that I worked with earlier in my journey, and that really helped me form a lot of this stuff that I have put together now, and then also a lot of the stuff that I work on with my students as part of my mentoring program. But multi-threaded prospecting essentially means you are actually reaching out to your prospects in batches of 3. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, I am reaching out to you. I wouldn't just call you. I would also either voicemail you or I would text you at the same time, right? So essentially what it'll look like is I give you a call, don't get access to you or don't get through. I would then leave you a voicemail, and then instead of a text, I'd probably ideally actually send you an email, right? So I would call you and I'd say, leave a voicemail. I'd say, hey, Joe here from CrowdStrike. I'd love to have a quick chat. I've actually just flicked you a quick email with a bit of some details around why I'd reached out. Have a look. Let me know if it's worthwhile. Let's tee up a time and explore it a bit further. Then I'd send them the email. That is one sequence. I'm doing that in one go, right? So what you want to do is when you're prospecting, you want to multi-thread, and 2, you want to make sure that you're using multiple modalities in what I like to call triples. So triples is the quickest way to get cut through using multi-channel prospecting, right? So what you're doing is essentially you're combining 3 channels. So call, voice, so pick 3 out of these: call, voicemail, text, email, LinkedIn. Those are all your various angles that you can use. If you were to extend that even more, you could probably also do a referral, right? So you could maybe give them a call, and maybe they don't get through to you, and then maybe you send them an email and say, hey, one of my colleagues mentioned that they'd worked with you in the past, we'd love to have a chat. And then you could get your colleague, you could ghostwrite them an email, send it to them, and then you can get your colleague to send that email and CC you in, right? So that's an example of a triple. You're using multiple modalities. I have a full prospecting guide that I have pulled together. And that is over here. So this is the prospecting toolkit. Now, this is something that I have reserved for people in my community or people that I work with, just because it is quite a high value asset. So this essentially fully explains, how the prospecting sequencing works, and it includes basically all the emails, everything that you need, right? So you can plug and play and just use it. So I don't know if I'll include this, maybe not, we'll see. But essentially this is what you go about doing. Actually, you know what? I will include this. I'm feeling charitable, and I do want you guys to get access to this stuff. I'm not going to go through and explain every little element of this just yet. I might do this at the end of this video, but I just want to sort of highlight how prospecting triples works, right? So triples is the best way to actually get cut through. If you're not doing triples, you are missing out on getting opportunities. You're missing out on getting booked meetings, right? I'll give you some stories. I used prospecting triples from way back when I was a Gartner, right? When I was a Gartner, I was like 23, I'm 32 now. So I was almost 10 years ago, I was using prospecting triples. And I remember one of the deals that got me over the line and got me to winner's circle. So got me to President's Club basically. That came off the back of the last triple that I executed on the last day of the sequence. And the CEO responded to a LinkedIn message. I couldn't get him on the phone, didn't respond to texts, couldn't do anything, but he responded to the LinkedIn message and he said, dude, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you. I have been meaning to speak to you. I'm really glad you reached out. Let's book a meeting. And 3 months later, to the date that he responded to me, that deal came in. And that deal came in when I was in the airport lounge flying to New Zealand to see my family. And I literally remember looking down and seeing the DocuSign notification saying the contract was signed. And I was so over the moon, right? So when I tell you prospecting triples works, this is the quickest way to find deals and get dollars in your bank account through commissions, prospecting triples. So what I will quickly do, again, I don't want to go into triples in extreme detail just because it is a bit of a longer topic, but I'll give you a very quick overview of this document. And again, I will probably include it in a link below so you can download the asset. But essentially what I've done is it looks at sequences depending on whether or not you have certain inputs, right? So for example, if you have a valid number, you can get these numbers on Lucia, you can get these numbers on Zoom Info. So Lucia, you should know this if you're in sales. Lucia is, Lucia has a competitor. Okay, very interesting. Lucia is one of the OG sales intelligence tools, right? So pay for it. It is a little expensive. See if you can expense it on the company, but it will literally give you all of their contact numbers in a company, right? So your CIO, your CTO, your CMO, you're going to get all of their companies' contact numbers. You're going to get their emails. So it's a really good tool. It's just a plugin that goes into LinkedIn. If you don't want to use Lucia, the other one that is pretty good is Zoom Info over here. Also really solid. So has the company's profile, has all of their contacts. Super useful, super effective. Same thing, it's a plugin, so you just pay for it, download the plugin, link it to your LinkedIn, and then you can start to get people's details. So assuming you have a valid number and email and a LinkedIn, here is how you can sequence and run your triples, right? So day 1, you call, voicemail, and email. Day 2, you call, text, and email. Day 3, call and LinkedIn ad. Day 5, call, voicemail, email. Day 6, day 8, and day 9. I tend to break them up so you have a little bit of a break between days, because if you're hitting people with triples every freaking day, you can start to get a bit spammy. So you got to be a little careful with this. So I typically go day 1. So if you do it on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the next week, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? That's how you would kind of sequence this out. As far as tracking the activities, that's where you use your CRM, right? So I'm not telling you to go rogue and not use your CRM. This, once you start the sequence, you want to track your activities in the CRM. But this is a rough flow, right? You don't have to be hard and fast about this. This just gets you into the habit of thinking about triples, right? So if you call someone, you want to straight away be like, look, do I send them a voicemail and then send them an email? Do I send them a voicemail and a LinkedIn? This is an ideal way to sequence this. Now, there's different variations of this. And again, I don't want to go into too much detail, but I will give you a link to this. So just play around, right? And figure out your flow. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? So you guys should be all right. Now, so I'm just having some screen issues over here. Why are you doing that? All right, should be good. So there's different variations, right? So if you have a number but no email, right? Here's what you would do. If you have no email and no number, well, then you're doing LinkedIn, right? You're calling through reception. You're leaving a voicemail at reception or through the direct line, and you're doing a LinkedIn message, etc. So as far as the emails go, I literally just have them mapped out for you. So take this, use it, right? I've pretty much got a very straightforward template that you can use. All you need to do is just prep the input so that you've got it ready to go. The emails build on each other, right? So I keep the body of the email the same. The body of the email is the same. The opener is the only different thing, right? So over here, you can see the first email, it has a standard relevant opener. Pick one of those. The second email, you're basically just going to say, hey, I appreciate you're busy. I'm just circling back on my previous message, and then you insert the same body. And then you have your final closeout email, which is just like, hey, I'm circling back one last time. If it's not relevant, I don't want to bother you. I'd love some feedback on the below. Insert the same body. Same thing for LinkedIn. Right, so you only switch to LinkedIn ideally if you can't get any cut through on email, and then you basically say, "Hey, dude, or hey, Andrew, I shot you a message via email. Appreciate you're busy, or you got a busy inbox, as I sometimes have the same. Just thought I'd surface this to get your thoughts. As mentioned in my email, insert your email again, and then same thing. You basically have 3 touches on LinkedIn. It's pretty idiot-proof, right? Like the idea is, you want to have a very calibrated approach to prospecting so that they go, okay, this guy is persistent or this girl is persistent, but they're respectful and I can see that they're trying to come at me with something valuable instead of those spammy bullshit messages that you get on LinkedIn where it's like, hey, do you want to apply for this MBA program? It's like, no, I don't, right? And you can tell it's an automated sequence, right? So in this situation, it's not an automated sequence. It actually, you can tell that someone has tailored a message for you, but it's the best way to do because it is tailored, but it's also scalable, right? So if you can templatize things, it's scalable. Here is a text template as well, right? So post-call text template. Here's something that you can use, and then there's a breakup text template as well. So if you can't actually get through to them, you can use a breakup text. So you can say, hey, circling back one last time, appreciate you're busy. Let me know your thoughts on your LinkedIn message or voicemail or email, and if it's worthwhile connecting, right? So you can literally have a bit of a sequence with text as well. Again, I've outlined everything up here. Right, so you can see here, day 9, you're calling them, you're sending a breakup text, and you're sending the final LinkedIn. So I've got everything mapped out. Have a look, figure it out. It's not rocket science. So that is how you want to be thinking about prospecting. You want to be doing prospecting in a multi-threaded fashion. Bear with me for a second. Just going to put on a little air conditioning, and I'm probably not going to edit this out. I'm currently in Sydney and it is hot as hell. Okay, so multi-threaded prospecting, okay? That is the high-level framework for prospecting. And if you want all the details, go through this guide, modify it for yourself. That is your prospecting toolkit. That is your prospecting roadmap. Pretty idiot-proof, right? Again, this is about habit change. What I see going wrong with a lot of salespeople is they habitually get into this reactive mode, right? Or in psychology, they call it tired and wired, right? You're tired and you're wired and you're reactive. You're not proactive. If you want to be a successful account executive, it is about proactive process. You want to get ahead. You don't want to be reacting all the time. You are going to react sometimes, but you don't want to be in reactive mode all the time. That affects your cortisol levels, that affects your dopamine, that puts you in an extremely stressed state, and you're not able to operate effectively, right? So the best way to get ahead of that headspace and to get ahead of that reactive state is to start being proactive. The best way to do that is plan. Schedule it in your calendar. Have your 2 setup blocks. That is my mandatory that I recommend to all the students in our program. I look at their calendars and I'm like, where is your mandatory 2 setup blocks? Show me your PG planning. Show me that I can see that you've done your setup for the week ahead, right? This is how you get ahead so that you don't get screwed. Now, once you've done that, I'm gonna go past that. But once you've done that, let's get into the cold call, right? So, how do we want to be approaching cold calling? What is your exact cold call template look like? Now, pre-cold call prep. Now, what I recommend is once you've got your weekly PG planning blocks flowing, right, and you've got that set, you also want to make sure that you have your confidence, your conviction tight. You want to make sure you're really rock solid. So what I recommend is, whatever your solution is, I recommend that you pick 3 to 5 customer stories. This is so mandatory, so mandatory. You have to be really confident in your solution. And the best way to be confident in your solution is to not have product knowledge. That helps, but you want to make sure you have a very clear understanding of what problems you solve. And you also want to have a very clear understanding of some case studies of customers that you've solved problems for. So how I do this is very straightforward. I would go to your company website. So let's say, for example, it's Okta, right? So let's go to Okta. I like Okta. I've got a number of team members that work at Okta. I've got a number of former colleagues and friends that work at Okta. So then what I would do is I would go to customer case studies, right? So flick onto this. Top brands trust Okta. That's fantastic. Let's say, for example, you work in which geography? I wonder if they have a geo breakdown. Okay, they don't have a geo breakdown, but that's fine. Let's say that you have a lot of retail customers. So let's say retail, let's take manufacturing. Oh, I can't settle multiple. Okay, so let's take retail. What I would do is Baker's Delight. Here we go. Baker's Delight is a well-known brand. Click into this case study, and I would take time studying these 3 things. This is the best format for knowing customer case studies and then articulating that to your customers. 1, the problem. What problem did the customer have? 2, the solution. How did you tackle that for the customer? 3, how was it different to anything in the market, right? So that is your framework, problem, solution, differentiator. The other one that you can actually use, and this is something that we used to use at Gartner, was problem, solution, outcome. So it's like, what is the problem? So for example, let's say that Baker's Delight, hey, if I was to literally articulate this to you, I would say, we work with Baker's Delight. One of their biggest problems prior to working with us was they had a ton of suppliers, and it was really hard to manage supplier accounts to our supplier portal in a safe manner. And what that led to was missed orders, missed deliveries. We were really falling apart in our supply chain because we had no seamless way to manage all of our suppliers in a secure fashion. What Okta did is we provided them a solution that was able to effectively, securely provide access to our suppliers globally, and we were able to manage 10,000 suppliers doing that. And the outcome of that was that we actually were able to reduce service desk calls by 50%, and we were able to increase the number of franchisees that were leveraging the system by 50% and driving some tangible revenue results for them, right? That's an example. I literally have just read this case study, so I'm kind of riffing it off the top of my mind. But I would use that framework, problem, solution, outcome, or you can also go problem, solution, differentiator. I prefer problem, solution, outcome, to be honest, but problem, solution, differentiator also works, right? So if I was doing, say, CrowdStrike, for example, good old CrowdStrike where I used to work, and if you go to, say, CrowdStrike, let's have a look at company, and let's have a look at some of their case studies. I'll give you an example of how you can use, come on buddy, here we go, and we've got industry recognition, customer stories, right? So let's go to customer stories, and let's go to good old Mercedes. I used to use this case study a lot. I loved using this case study. So one of the things that maybe if you were using the problem solution differentiator, I would say, hey, one of the biggest challenges that Mercedes had is that they have, a lot of critical endpoints. Literally their F1 cars are endpoints, and they're collecting so much data. And a lot of that data is incredibly critical. That's a sensitive IP that the company, Mercedes banks on to be able to have a successful racing organization, which is so critical to their brand. The biggest problem that they really face faced was being able to secure their endpoints because there was such a high risk breach target, and they just didn't have the technical capability and the tools to get the visibility they needed. CrowdStrike was able to tackle that with the Falcon platform by providing them, arguably the best EDR in the business, and made sure that they had no breaches occur to them since the time that we've been partnered with them. The real differentiator, right, with CrowdStrike versus all the other EDR platforms out there, or endpoint detection and response platforms out there, is the ability to prevent data loss at scale, right? The ability to prevent data loss, especially for endpoints that is capturing massive amounts of information. So that's another way you can articulate it, right? So pick your poison. I personally prefer using problem solution outcome because it's really tangible. But the reason I'm harping on about that is before you prospect, you want to have 3 to 5 of these stories. You want to be ready to go. You want to be able to just bring them out because that is going to give you that confidence, right? The other thing that I would do is make sure that you have a name drop list. Now, the best way to build out a name drop list is obviously look at all your references on the website. So you can see here, right? You can see all of the references that CrowdStrike has. But let's say, for example, you're in a smaller territory like Australia or New Zealand, or maybe you're in the UK and it's a very US focused company. All of their case studies are in the US. Build out a name drop list of local customers. The best way to do that is speak to your customer success guys, speak to some of the other account executives. Hey, who are some of our happy customers in region? And just have that list that you can name drop, right? So I've been a big fan of name dropping because name dropping is a great way to create intrigue, right? It's like, oh, wow, you work with them. I didn't know you work with them. That's really interesting, right? So you want to be able to use it to create intrigue in prospects. Okay. That is some background work that you want to make sure you do prior to starting to aggressively prospect, because you don't want to get someone on the phone and then they say, hey, that's pretty cool. It sounds pretty interesting that you do this sort of stuff. Who else do you work with? And then you're like, I'm not sure. And or it really helps if someone says, hey, what do you guys do? You're able to share a customer story. You're able to bring it to life. So, if you're speaking to someone in a specific industry and that you actually work with the biggest name in that industry, you might say, hey, look, I don't know if you know this, but we actually work with X. And this is how we add value to them. And they're a big public reference. They love us. They advocate for us. And that's what we do. Is that useful to you? And then your prospect might go, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know you worked with the biggest player and arguably one of our biggest competitors in the industry. I mean, clearly you're adding value. I'm interested. I want to learn a bit more, right? So use it to create intrigue. People hate missing out on things that they don't know about. So you want to make sure that you're using that intrigue. Now, the next thing that you want to do as part of your cold call prep, and this is something that ties into your PG planning, right? So just to articulate, this part here, right? The customer stories, etc. This is not part of your PG planning. You should be doing this as part of your learning. So one of the things that I used to do, sorry, I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit over here, but let me just finish this point and then we'll get into the next part. And I promise I'm going to get to the cold calling script, right? I know some of you are probably waiting for that. But I just want to share one thing here. You want to make sure that during your learning time, so I recommend doing at least 2 to 3 learning blocks a week. Dedicate one of those blocks every week just for 30 minutes at the end of your day. You want to be going through a customer case study. This is something I used to do religiously in every company I worked at. I would be going through, and each of my learning blocks, I would pick a story and I'd go, okay, let's view this story. Who is this customer? What did they do? What did we do for them? How did we help them? I made sure that I was constantly learning customer stories over and above my own customer stories, so that I always had something up my sleeve that I could just draw on, right? And that's so important to do that. Now, going into cold call prep. Now, I've mentioned something here, right? Cold/warm calling. You want to figure out ways to warm up your call every time. No call is truly a cold call. You can always find a way to warm up that conversation. Now, the best way to warm up that conversation is by looking at some data points during your prospecting or your pipeline generation planning block. So if you're wondering, what do I do during my PG time? This is one of the things that you do, right? You will figure out, okay, so you can go on their LinkedIn, you can have a look at, is there anything in their bio? So this is an example of something in one of the prospects that I was going after. They literally had this on their bio, right? So I don't know if you can actually see this, but the company that I was targeting was Hoyts. If you're in Australia, you'll know Hoyts pretty well. Hoyts is essentially they've got all the cinemas, right? They have a cinema chain and entertainment company. And this is the chief technology officer of Hoyts. And I could literally see it in his current projects. I could see that he talked about deployment of digital cinema, implementing remote monitoring, and establishing group service desk. He has literally told me his projects on his LinkedIn, and you'll be surprised how much information you can find on LinkedIn. So during your PG planning block, as you are filling this out, so let's say, for example, this is Hoyts, Hoyts, you find the stakeholder name, the stakeholder is the CTO, see if their number is on Lucia or on your CRM. Ideally, you've got a nicely built out CRM. If it's not, put it into your CRM. And then here under the talk track and the messaging, right? I've literally said it over here. I said, reference his LinkedIn remote monitoring solution. So if you have a solution that can actually help with that, you can literally, in your pitch, you can literally find that on his LinkedIn and just make a little note. So when you call him, right, you can use that to warm up the call. So then instead of calling him and saying, hey, it's Joe from Zscaler, and then lead into your pitch, which I'll share with you in a second. What you can do is actually say, hey, Tony, it's Joe from Zscaler. Hope you don't mind. I noticed you had something interesting on your LinkedIn around implementing a remote monitoring solution. Do you have a couple minutes? I think I might have something useful for you. So very quickly, you can warm up that call and he can go, okay, you've reached out to me and you clearly know that I have something valuable and you took the time to find that out, right? And then you can go into your cold call, into your warm call pitch, right? Which is essentially you want to validate the CEO of the problem, you want to validate urgency of the problem, then book the meeting. I'll talk about this framework in a second, right? And how you can actually use it. Anyways, that is what you should be doing during your PG prep block. So the best ways to do this, go on LinkedIn quickly, find their profile. Is there anything that is jumping out at you? The other thing that you can do is if we go to LinkedIn and we'll pick a random person, let's see if I can pick a random person. All right, let's take Robin. Let's take Robin Kuda. So Robin is the CEO of AirTrunk. Hypothetically, let's say, for example, if I want to reach out to Robin and I can see that he used to actually work at NextDC as an executive director, and he was a CEO of NextDC, maybe NextDC is a current customer of yours, right? So this is really powerful because another way to warm up a cold call, and you want to be doing this in your cold call prep blocks, is you can have a look to see, has the person that you're trying to target worked in a company that you previously sold to already, or your company has already sold to? So best way to do this, if I looked at Robin's profile, I might quickly have a look and go, I wonder if NextDC is a customer, because he's currently at AirTrunk, but was NextDC a customer or is a customer? Quickly go on my CRM, have a look. Can I see customer accounts? Yes, NextDC is a customer. That's another way you can warm up the call. So when I call Robin, I can say, hey Robin, hope you don't mind, mate. I did some LinkedIn stalking. I saw you used to be at NextDC. They're actually a current customer. Would you have a minute or two? I think we've got something that could be really relevant for you in AirTrunk. I'd love to just get your thoughts. If it's relevant, we can catch up later. How's that sound? Boom, right? You've warmed up that call. So you always want to figure out a way to warm up a call. Another really good way is if someone else in the team knows them, right? So like if you got a particularly senior prospect and you just want to see if someone knows them, you can have a look here on LinkedIn and you can see, I wonder if Robin is connected to anyone I know. And then I can see here, Robin is connected to Lohith. I'm like, okay, how does Robin know Lohith? And then I might, quickly ping Lohith, who's maybe my colleague, and say, hey, dude, how do you know Robin? And then Lohith could say, yeah, mate, like he's my brother-in-law. Or hey, like I know Robin really well. I actually did business with him in the past, right? So in that situation, I can call up Robin and say, Robin, hope you don't mind me reaching out. I was speaking to Lohith Rohera at CrowdStrike, one of my really good mates, and he mentioned, it might be worthwhile me giving you a quick call, right? So again, you can find a way to warm that call up, right? So that's how you want to be thinking about how do you warm up a cold call. And this is all stuff that you do in your prospecting prep blocks, and make sure that you include your talk track and your messaging here. So when it comes time to prospect, you can quickly pop this up. You've got your messaging there and you're going straight into it, right? This is efficient, high volume, quality prospecting. It all comes down to your prep. If you fuck your prep up, your prospecting will be shit. And if your prospecting is shit, you're just going to get outbooked by your colleagues. Your colleagues are going to have a bigger pipeline and you're going to end up getting put in a performance plan. No one wants that, right? Now for the part that we've all probably been waiting for. How do we make a cold call? Now you can see here, I hate using that language of cold calling. So if I say warm call, I really mean cold call. But I believe that you can find a way to warm up any conversation. If you can't use those three different modalities, which I just talked about, so either a past customer in a different role, potentially someone that is connected to someone that those two ways. If you can't use those two ways, then the third way that you can warm up the call is with industry references, which goes back to your name drop list. So if you know that Robin, we'll use the Robin example again, right? If you know that Robin is the founder of AirTrunk, right? But you maybe work with NextDC, or you work with someone else. Like it doesn't have to be someone that he's been the CEO at. Maybe you work with a couple of other industry players that are well recognized. That is another way. That is the third way that you can warm up this cold call, right? So how does the cold call / warm call look, right? I will just do it for you in real time so you can see the different component parts. Actually, you know what? We're going to do something cheeky. I am literally going to call up one of my students in my mentoring program right now, and we are going to do a live cold call. It's a dummy, but we're going to do a live cold call. I hope this works. He usually picks up.
Joey.
My man, don't say anything nuclear. I am recording a YouTube video and I'm making a cold call to you right now. Do you want to do a little 2-minute cold call with me?
Don't say anything nuclear.
All right, you're literally being recorded, so I'm not going to edit this out. So we're just going to launch into a cold call. You are a CTO and I am a rep from CrowdStrike. Do you want to play along?
Might as well.
All right, let's go. Ring, ring.
Hello?
Hello, is this Jasveer speaking?
It is.
Jasveer, it's Joe here from CrowdStrike. Mate, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I noticed that you're actually connected to a gentleman called Rohith at CrowdStrike who mentioned he's done some work with you in the past, and he thought it might be worthwhile me reaching out. Do you have a minute or two for me to just fill you in and see if it's relevant?
Rohith. I remember someone like that. Yeah, sure, I got a minute.
Yeah, awesome. Well, mate, just briefly, we're doing a fair bit right now with organizations similar space to you in healthcare. You'll know this more than me. The biggest challenge that we're seeing right now is because of so many different nurses, clinicians, admin staff, contractors, securing endpoints is a huge challenge. And not just securing it, but actually getting 24/7 visibility on such a large fleet and responding. I'm just curious, at a high level, is that something that you're thinking about? Is that something that you're trying to address going into the next little while?
Well, look, we are, cybersecurity is one of our objectives, as you know, and we are looking at the front-end visibility piece. So to answer your question, yes, it is something that's on the register.
Mate, that's awesome to hear. And I do want to just see if it's relevant to you. I don't know in terms of timeline and urgency on your side. Is this something that is more of a 3 to 6 month challenge to address, a 6 to 12 month challenge to address, potentially a longer time frame? Like where would you sort of stack the criticality on this?
Well, we are quite a large organization, so there's a lot of complexity around that. I would put it in the more 6 to 9 month category.
Yeah,
awesome.
awesome.
It's definitely something we want to get done ASAP, but given how slow big organizations move, it takes time.
Mate, understandable, and it's something that we see typically with healthcare, right? It's not just the internal factors, but the external factors as well, especially in public health. Well, I won't keep you if that's the case. Would it be worthwhile? I mean, if it's 6 to 9 months away, it's probably not a tomorrow conversation, but would it be worthwhile maybe in the next couple of weeks if I dropped in a 30-minute placeholder, maybe mid next week, back half of next week, just to take you through what we're doing with other healthcare providers, just so you've got us on the radar and you can start to get a bit of a feel for how the market is addressing this problem.
Look, I think that would be a great idea, because that gives me an understanding of how they're tackling it, and we could potentially use some of those ideas in building out our strategy.
Absolutely. I'll send you some time back end of next Thursday. One thing as well, can I ask, I want to make sure that this is valuable for you. You just mentioned something there around insights from the market and what others are doing. What else is top of mind for you? What else would you get value from that session?
Oh, look, from a cybersecurity posture, we rarely want to become secure. I know you know this. We were breached last year, and a lot of sensitive PPI data was stolen. So getting that front-end visibility is key for us.
Fair enough.
If you can dive in on that, that'll be great.
Fair enough, mate. I can shed some insight around that. Awesome. Hey, I appreciate your time. I'll send you a placeholder.
Appreciate it.
All right, Jazz, I will we'll end the role play. I'll let you go because I'm literally live recording right now, but I'll give you a call later in the day, my man.
I'm good.
All right. Much love. Bye-bye.
See ya, bye.
Okay, so I just did a live simulated cold call. Now, it is simulated, and I do want to say that that wouldn't necessarily have been that smooth in real life, but at the same time, I've had plenty of cold calls that have literally gone like that. So let me break down the component parts of what I just did. I opened up the cold call, right? And I basically, this is a flexible intro. If you don't have a really strong intro, for example, like what I just did there, I just said, hey, it's Joe from CrowdStrike. I was recommended to reach out to you by Rohith. That's a very strong intro. If you don't have that, one of the things that I like to do is just say, hey, it's Joe from CrowdStrike. How have you been? I say, how have you been instead of how are you? Because how have you been assumes familiarity, right? So the moment you say that, it's a pattern interrupt. They go, yeah, I've been good, but you asked that to me in a way that you've spoken to me before, right? So it's an immediate pattern interrupt and kind of keeps them there for a second. Then what you do is you give them a very quick intro. Hey, look, like I mentioned, Joe from CrowdStrike. The reason I actually reached out is because we're doing a bunch of work with Company X and Company Y in your space. I'm just really curious if and then you mention problem statement. So you insert customer problem. I'm really curious if 24/7 detection and response of really sophisticated threats, which we see as a big problem, is relevant for you. If it is, great, let's catch up later. If not, that's totally fine. But I'm just curious, is that at all relevant to you? Other ways to ask that is mention problem statement and just say, hey, look, just give me a little bit of guidance. Is that up your alley? Is that something that you take ownership for? What you're trying to do is you're trying to find the CEO of the problem, okay? Every company's executive, right? Any executive person in a company is responsible for a set of problems. What you need to do is you need to find the CEO of the problem that you can solve. Then you qualify that, yes or no, and they'll tell you, right, look, yeah, I do look after that, or that is a problem that I am facing, that is a problem that I am looking at. The next thing you want to do is you want to explore urgency. So if you, in the cold call that I just simulated there, I asked them, hey, is this a 3 to 6 month time frame to tackle the challenge? Is it a 6 to 9 month, or potentially 9 to 18 months? Like, what is the time frame here in terms of tackling this? And they will tell you what the urgency is, right? And they might say, actually, I've literally had this happen. They might literally say, hey, dude, you called me at the perfect time. I am in an active buying cycle right now. And I'm glad you reached out, because I am looking for an alternative. I am looking for what else is in the market. So if they are the CEO of the problem, do they have an active issue they are looking to address? Then what you want to do, is close out the call. Now, before you close out the call, what you can do as well is you can insert a mini value proposition. I'm a little iffy on this, right? Like, it really depends. If they're very quick to want to get off the phone, then I'm a bit 50-50 with the UVP. But what that would look like is you would then say, hey, thanks for sharing. This is absolutely a problem that we can solve. As I'd mentioned before, we're currently solving it for company X and company Y. And how we're doing it is by, we have this capability, and then you might briefly mention the capability. But I would almost put this as optional. Right? So I would put this as an optional element. Again, play it by ear. You want to be a little dynamic here, right? So if you think that, hey, they're just trying to get off the phone, but they are interested, scrap that. You go straight for the close and you say, hey, look, I'd love to set up a time with you, whether it's a coffee or potentially a Zoom. I'd love to share a little bit more around how we're helping your peers. I'd love to learn a little bit more from you. How does that sound? Lock in the time. As soon as you lock in the time, what you want to do is then use this agenda item, right? So my favorite thing to do is I will say, hey, your time is precious, and I want to make sure that I'm coming to that prepared with something that is really valuable to you. What would be most useful for you to get on that call outside of anything that I've mentioned already? What this does is then that gives them an opportunity to say, okay, well, I want you to come to this meeting and talk to me about X, Y, and Z. Take a note of that, because that tells you what is top of mind for them. The subtle subliminal thing that you're doing here as well, and I'll show you how this feeds in, is you include this in the agenda. So when you send them the invite, you include that in the agenda. And typically after a cold call, you have to always do this. Don't just send them the agenda, send them a LinkedIn request, and also send them an email and just say, hey, thank you for the time over the phone. Really looking forward to catching up with you. You mentioned these 3 areas. We'll have a chat about that. And also, here is a white paper or something that might be useful for you to just have a look at in the meantime. Right? So what you're doing there is you're establishing credibility and you're getting your hooks in, right? So because you know what is valuable to them, you've included that in the agenda, and then you've sent them an email with your details, and you've given them something of value, so that the statistical likelihood of them showing up to that call is significantly higher, right? The data doesn't lie. When this process is followed, the likelihood of them showing up to the call skyrockets. It's like double, triple the likelihood that they're going to show up to this call. So that is the ideal way to run a cold call. So there's 3 things. 1, warm up the call with a solid intro. 2, find the CEO of the problem. 3, establish urgency. Actually, there's 4 parts of this. And then 4, once you lock in the meeting, is establish priorities and include that into your invite, include that into your follow-up email. This is the sort of way when you operate, you start to differentiate yourself from the rest of the vendor reps out there, right? And so few reps do this, but this is what tight sales operation looks like, okay? This is how you operate like a professional. Cold call no-nos, never fucking do these things, okay? So first one is do not ask very sensitive professional questions too early. When I used to work for Zscaler, this is something that my old SDR, shout out to my old SDR, I'm not going to mention your name, but you know who you are. We were in a cold calling session and he said, what's your cyber strategy? And I was like, dude, you just called this guy. You just called this guy and you point blank asked him, what's your cyber strategy? You don't have enough trust to ask that kind of question, okay? So you want to be really careful with very sensitive professional questions on a cold call. The idea of a cold call is establish some rapport, warm them up, book the meeting, get the fuck out. The next thing, is this a bad time? Like, no shit, right? Like, no shit. There's better ways to ask that question. I like to warm up the call very quickly and say, look, do you have a moment, do you have a minute or two for me to give you some context If it's useful, we can chat later. If it's not, don't worry about it. That is a really good way to do it. You don't want to say, is this a bad time, right? Because also you're saying bad time, okay? Like all they hear is, yeah, it's a bad time, okay? This is a cold call. Get that out of the vocabulary. I hate reps that do that. Hi there, this is John from blah, blah, blah. This is a cold call. Like, fuck off. Like, you're like, I know I'm being quite abrasive about this, but I want you to get this through your brain. I want you to get this through your mind. You are not an appointment setter, or as I put it there, you're not a fucking appointment setter. You're a business professional, right? So you want to come in with some gravitas. You want to come in with some value. And that is what this pitch is designed to do, right? You want to come in with some value. You want to name drop a couple of you want to name drop a couple of customer references. You want to share a problem statement with them and very quickly validate, is this a problem that you care about? If you don't worry, I'll leave. But if it is a problem that you care about, I think we should chat. That's the attitude that you're coming in with. Anyways, those are some no-nos. And sorry, last one, not knowing what you do in depth, right? And being able to articulate it very simply. When I was at CrowdStrike, I remember I had a cold call that I got put on the spot. He was like, what exactly does CrowdStrike do? And I said, mate, it's very simple. There's 3 things that you need to think about as a cyber leader. How do I protect, detect, and respond? So if we're talking about protection, we help organizations stop things from getting in. Worst case scenario, something gets in. Advanced attacks, social engineering, they have valid credentials. Once they're in your environment, you need to be able to detect it really quickly. And I'm talking about very sophisticated stuff. Can you detect very sophisticated stuff? That's the second element of what we do. The third area is if we can keep things out, we keep it out. If we can detect it, we detect it. But if something gets in and it starts to move around, you want to be able to respond. And you want to be able to respond at any time of the day, any time of the week, any time of the year. You want to be able to respond at the same speed that you do right now when you're online versus the same speed of response when it's Christmas Eve, right? And no one is online. We help organizations by doing the responding for them. That's what we do for our customers. Does that make sense to you, right? Like very quickly be able to articulate what you do in a very concise, precise, and simple manner. And the best way, guys, the best way to be able to do this is go back and learn some customer stories. Make sure that you are learning one new customer story every week. This compounds over the course of a year. Can you imagine if you've been doing this religiously every week just once, right? Every week just once. If you have, say, 45 working weeks out of the year or 40 working weeks out of the year, you've got 40 customer stories, man. Like you've got so much customer insight, and it makes you sound more credible. And credibility is one of those things that people can hear, people can feel your credibility. So when you don't do this work, you know, and you've been in a role for like 2 years and you don't have any customer stories, that's how you end up sounding completely useless, and people are looking at you going like, how have you been in this role for 2 years? Like, what have you been doing? You know, so you want to make sure that you develop that confidence and conviction by putting in the work. One customer story a week. It's not rocket science, right? And learn it in that format: problem, solution, outcome, or problem, solution, differentiator, right? Or even you can go problem, solution, outcome, differentiator, right? 4 steps. Very straightforward. Anyways, that is all I will cover in this video. I think I've covered a fair bit of content. In the next video, I'm going to talk to you about pulling this all together, including calendar setup, operating rhythm, and how you actually operationalize all of this capability into your day-to-day. Okay? If any of this is useful, like the video, share the video. Like I said, all of this content is about helping you guys, helping you girls out there, all of you SDRs, your account executives, your first-time sellers. Like, I want to help you the way that I unfortunately didn't have help and I had to figure it out, right? So all of this is going to help you become more successful. If any of you are interested in exploring what working with me looks like and working with Tech Sales U looks like a bit further, link below, hop on a call. There's no obligations to work with me, but just hop on and we can have a chat. Anyways, see you on the next call or see you on the next meeting. What am I saying? See you on the next video. Been talking to this camera for far too long. See you on the next video. Yep, hope that was useful.